In Dead Ops arcade games, the concept of how you increase your score multiplier works the same way. Collecting treasure and gems will boost your multiplier. Now, completely maxing out your score multiplier was something that was relatively easy to do in older DUA titles. I recently loaded into a DUA 1 match, and it took me 14 minutes, or round 13, to max out a 9x score multiplier. And on DUA 2, it took a little bit longer, 43 minutes, or round 25. Then we could load into DUA 3, and it's actually quite different, in the sense that it becomes drastically more difficult to boost your score multiplier as the multiplier gets higher. For example, once you finally attain a 9x score multiplier in DUA 3, you're still only 55% of the way towards completely maxing out to 9x. In older DUA games, whether the score multiplier bar for the 9x was barely filled or maxed out entirely, really didn't matter. Regardless, you were still getting the same amount of score for all the kills and loot you got. On Dead Ops Arcade 3, about 3 months after the game was released, an unknown reward was added for players who managed to completely max out a 9x score multiplier. Now, this was an unusual choice insofar as nobody had accomplished this feat at that point. Not that they had any reason to go for it prior, but even still, max out to 9x was something that only a few players on the planet were going to be capable of achieving. About 10 days after the existence of a reward was announced, a player named Paperdeer used an exploit where he somehow continuously respawned an elephant and collected its loot over and over again, until he finally reached a max 9x, discovering that the reward was a random fate. The maximum number of fates that a single player can naturally have on DUA 3 is just 2, so this reward meant that players could be triple fated, which was of course a pretty big deal. Also, shout out Paperdeer, rocking an MOZ clan tag back in a Relax It In video from 2011. We've been around for a while, folks, and we ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
Ooh, this is gonna be fun.
Anyways, a few days later, the first legitimate max 9x occurred, and I was actually in that match as the person providing life donations. Then, a few weeks later, I became the second player to achieve the reward in top down, getting my third fate on round 92, with it taking about 9 hours of flawless gameplay to attain. I remember it was like 2 in the morning, and everybody was going nuts in my Twitch chat as the fate of firepower dropped down from the heavens above as my third fate. And then sadly my teammate had the damn friendship fate in that 3-player match, and siphoned all my lives for the remainder of the game.
That is so fucking shitty, dude.
Over the next few months, players got better, so they weren't throwing away their max 9x runs so much by dying. The game also received updates which made it easier to attain a larger score multiplier. The spawn rates of keys in the wild were bumped up, including the addition of a guaranteed key atop this tower. Players discovered methods to access parts of the wild without having to waste keys to open specific doors. New silverback slideways levels with keys inside of them were added to the game, and much more. Now, in my opinion, I was never a fan of the third fate reward from the very first day we figured out what it was. But as mentioned earlier, many players initially were not capable of maxing out the 9x, and even if they did, the third fate would be random, so they were not guaranteed to get some super overpowered setup. But as more players became capable of maxing it out, and players started resorting to cheesy tactics like playing a co-op match and then having their teammates back out once they got the reward, then yeah, it was probably time for the third fate to go. Old Rambo has gotten a bad rap as being the lone culprit behind the precious third fate being stripped away. Now, normally I wouldn't mind taking responsibility for that, but in this case, it's just not entirely true, as a player named Zarly was the person who was initially quote-unquote sick and tired, and I suppose I could have made a plea to keep it around, but instead I let it sadly burn in hell, along with the hopes and dreams of some players. A little over 4 months after its introduction, the reward for maxing out the 9x was finally changed, with the new reward intended to be less powerful, which would discourage co-op matches where teammates were barely playing and just boosting one player. The new reward now granted all players in the match maximum lives, nukes, speed boosts, and keys, which was a unique spectacle to behold, but was ultimately found to be underwhelming by the player base, which was sort of the point. The decision to remove the third fate reward continued to make a lot more sense once the Ikari exit bonus area was added to the game a couple months later in August, as that area provided players with a high volume of loot and potential key spawns. With its addition, maxing out the 9x score multiplier became easier than ever, with players being able to accomplish it in an actual solo match for the first time. Fast forward several years. The game in its current state, with all the optimization tricks that people have discovered in the wild, players on solo can usually max out the 9x by round 64, even with just moderate luck. And in co-op matches, it's even easier to max it out, as deadly dungeons are typically larger with an increased player count, along with having the ability to donate lives to downed teammates. which not only makes it easier to survive, but donating lives also provides a small chance of a key as a donation reward. To my knowledge, the earliest that anyone has ever achieved the max 9 times on DUA 3 is round 30. And it was actually a solo match. They got fortunate with the keys and also blessed with an appearance of Akari Exit as a recurring bonus from very early on into their run. Round 30, that's very impressive. They got a few of us in the community thinking over time, what is the earliest that a player can max out their 9 times score multiplier? With the right amount of luck, if everything is going your way, if all the balls are bouncing in your favor and all the stars have aligned, is it possible to max out the multi before leaving the round 4 wild? To kind of break this down and figure out if it's even feasible, let's talk about how exactly the multiplier meter works on DUA 3. And a lot of this information is taken directly from the game's code. There's a term I'll use here called multiplier value, or MV. You'll need a total of 10,602 MV in order to go from a 1 times to a maxed out 9 times. Now, how do you earn that 10,000 and change number? This chart on screen shows the value that different types of treasure and gems provide to your multiplier meter. Gems are the most valuable commodity for increasing your multiplier, with bigger gems of course providing bigger boosts to your multi, especially this gem over here, which actually only appears in 4 select areas of the game and nowhere else. Skull coins are very good, they each provide 1 MV, and then with all the other types of treasure, whether it's a measly silver bar or even a gold turtle, those are all worth just 0.2 MV each. So essentially 5 regular treasure pieces are the equivalent of 1 skull coin in terms of progressing your multiplier meter. The key to maxing out your 9 times is fittingly obtaining keys. With these keys you could open key chests, which are the real moneymaker. There is some variance of course, but typically a key chest will provide a multiplier value of roughly 220. And if we do the monster math, assuming you were not to collect any other loot in the game, it would take approximately 48 key chests to completely max out your multiplier. Now, let's kind of reverse engineer this. Let's assume you don't open any key chests. Just how valuable is all the loot that appears during the island arena and across the entire round 4 wild, which includes deadly dungeons, Akari Exit, and more. Again, there will be some variance from game to game, but based on some testing, all loot in these areas, not including any key chests, will provide you with approximately an 8 times score multiplier, which sounds solid on paper, but if you have a low 8 times multiplier, you're still only 28.3% of the way to accomplishing a max 9 times. Which means if you intend to max out the 9 times on round 4, you will need key chests to account for about 72% of your multiplier value. To reach that value, you will have to open about 34 key chests, which means not only obtaining 34 keys, but also an extra 6 keys to unlock the necessary doors across the wild, for a sum total of 40 keys. And let's assume you are fortunate enough to get that many keys, then you'll also need to be lucky enough to find 34 key chests, as the number of guaranteed key chests in the wild and associated areas is only 14. So you'll need a total of 20 random key chests to appear across your dungeons, and maybe even a random key chest or 2 in some bonus areas. So we determined the magic number of keys is 40. You're going to have to hit that number, or very close to it, if you're going to have any real shot at this. The good news is that there are 3 guaranteed keys that you will encounter, so I guess you only really need 37 keys.
Why don't you just make the minimum 37?
37.
37?
That's our games.
So let's try to break this down even further. How many keys do you normally get in a wild run? Most of this stuff is not in the code to my knowledge, but a little over a year ago, I played 100 designated matches where I tracked key spawn rates in the wild. This was part of larger testing that I conducted for a guide of mine called the Elements of DUA. I broke up the keys into different areas and categories. The beginning of the wild has 7 potential key spawns. Some of them are as low as a roughly 10% chance of appearing, while others are a coin flip or even better. It depends on the location of the key in question. There's also the middle part of the wild, so all the keys near the Gladiator Pit and the Blightfather Path. Then you have the lava section, those are really good keys over there. A few spawns there are in the 75% range. And Akari Exit is pretty huge too, with 9 potential key spawns across that level, although quite a few of them are uncommon. In the keys that we are counting right now, we'll also include the potential key spawns in the starting room of each deadly dungeon, and also the key spawn on the bottom area of the guaranteed Dark Crypt. Of all these areas I just mentioned, there are 33 potential key spawns. In 100 designated matches, the average number of keys that I obtained was 10.6 keys. Never once did I get more than half of the potential keys, with the highest number of keys being 16 out of 33, and the lowest was actually 5 of 33, which is abysmal, but it actually happened twice. There's other key opportunities in the game as well that I didn't track in that testing, as there's the silverback slideways key, which has a respectable 60% chance of appearing. There's also a potential key in the round 60 wild area, which is actually possible to reach while you're on round 4. A very convoluted trick to accomplish that, which I won't get into right now. And then there's a whole bunch of miscellaneous RNG keys. This is where Lady Luck comes into play. If lucky enough, you can encounter keys by opening a basket, crate, copper chest, key chests, present boxes, and life donation rewards. Some of these have a pretty low probability of giving you a key, like the basket is about a 1 in 564 chance, but you can encounter about 300 baskets or so in a full wild run, so you need to get lucky and pop a couple of basket keys. It's been known to happen from time to time. Copper chests are essentially a bundle of 10 baskets. There's been times where players open a copper chest and they got 2 keys from it. I don't know if I've ever seen it happen in a game of mine, maybe a long time ago, but that's the type of 4-leaf clover shenanigans that you'll need in a Luck of the Irish 9 times run. Now, even if you get a few random keys from interactables and other stuff like that, you still need to manufacture a few more keys to reach that magic number 40 that I mentioned earlier. Enter the Fate Divine Chalice, aka the Holy Grail.
Drink deep. Bountiful life is your reward.
You pretty much have to play a 4-player match for this challenge to be completed, for a couple reasons that I'll get into, but one being larger dungeon sizes with 4-player games, which also means greater likelihood of encountering a Margwa. And for those who don't know, a Margwa signifies that there's a random face zone up for grabs in that dungeon. The Fate of Divine Chalice is huge in these runs, because A, the Fate allows you to earn an extra life for every 150,000 points earned, rather than the default threshold of 200,000 points. And B, when you donate a life as a Chalice player, not only do you get donation rewards, but the down teammate who you pick up also gets rewards as well. And their reward pool is actually a lot more limited, which in my testing suggests that they have an increased chance of getting a key in their light donation reward package. About a 1% chance for the person donating, and maybe around 2 or 3%, give or take, for the person being picked up. Again, those are low percentages on paper, but if you have Chalice and wait to shoot zombie heads until you have an 8 or 9 times score multiplier, then you'll actually earn lives at a ridiculous rate and pop off a couple hundred donations in a single run. Also, by playing a 4-player match, it means that zombie heads have more health and also provide more score. Shooting a single zombie head with a 9 times in Chalice provides you with almost enough points to earn a life, which can then be flipped into a donation and possible key. I was part of a run very recently where my friend Shadow got Chalice from a dungeon, and we managed to manufacture 11 keys from donations in the round 4 wild alone, with 8 of those 11 keys being awarded to the recipient of the Chalice donations. That's on the higher tier of the luck scale, as sometimes you have Chalice and can't buy a key donation to save your life. Runs like that end up being more like the holy fail. But again, this is the type of luck you'll need for a run like this. I mean, look how close he came to maxing out the 9 times over here. This is the closest I've seen anyone get in the round 4 wild. And that's with just 1 of 9 keys in Akari, just 2 of 7 keys in the beginning area, a very low amount of keys from opening key chests, just 1 key return from opening close to 30 key chests this game. So I see runs like this. There's a lot that went well, also a lot that could have been improved on.
Alright, that'd be your new PB. What is that, a 9.8 times?
I'd say 9.8, yeah.
So there's no grand reveal to the end of this video. No one's ever completed this challenge. Maybe DUA 4, which comes out in less than a month, maybe that's even more difficult to max out the 9 times. Runs like these could have been the run, and the same could be said about a lot of different matches. Runs that start off promising die off. Other runs that started poorly maybe would have picked up as the game went along, but a lot of times the player quits, they restart, they give up. Those are the runs that got away. And the runs we'll never know more about.
So day 6 of the month, what are your thoughts on this challenge?
I still haven't given up. There's still hope.
What's the best run you've had so far?
Yesterday, 7 keys start, I think.
What came of that game?
Nothing. Game over. Wait, hold on. I actually have good keys here. What the fuck? I think this is like 7 natural.
He's the flusher of the 7 keys.
I don't understand what you guys are doing.
Not
That's why I
Chalice.
don't even want to comment.
Anyways.
You left 3 keys on the ground, 2 or 3 keys on the ground out there before you even came in here. We'll
I'm trying
never
to
know.
max it out. What you got was like decent, right? Your game was decent, and you didn't even get like close to it. Just imagine how many keys. Like,
got closer than you.
Everything factors in.
So boys, ongoing documentary on the luck of the Irish. Give us your thoughts 7 days in.
Insanity is definitely starting to kick in now.
I'm thinking maybe you just need to play in your
And turmoil within the demons is occurring for sure.
Clown behavior is occurring within the demons.
What's gonna be really sad is like if we get one of those games where like it's literally a sliver off. Because I would like to see somebody get it. It's me or somebody else. I don't really care. It'd be cool to see it done. With the amount of time that we've put into it.
If we're talking about doing something that no one's done in terms of Max 9, like,
Yeah.
you need to rely on these, let's say, lucky, not just the guarantees, but like the lucky ones. The way you got 5 basket keys in your run, like, I needed that. The way Shadow got 7 key donos, like, I needed some of that as well.
It's like another, like, benefit that you get whenever you just drop in the first dungeon. Like, you get good keys, you go in there, like, you might get a chalice stone, even, like, crypts.
It's almost like it's like you against the fucking wild, right, Shadow? It's like you feel like it's like a punching bag, and like if you hit this motherfucker enough, like you're gonna fucking get this shit to break open, and like all the gems and keys are just gonna come crying out of it. Like you're gonna be like teabagging this motherfucking punching bag, like, yeah, bitch, I told you.
I think you need to
train hard.
I think. What? Oh my god. I saw the poles were green, so I ran by and like I'm just glancing at my chat and I don't know. I shouldn't have even looked at like, oh my god, bro. I'm an idiot. Yeah, that never happened.
I mean, that's good for the documentary.
No shit.
The best player that we've had make the best run yet.
No.
Decides to, as a new strat, let key despawn on beach.
That sounds so stupid on paper, bro.
But in practice,
It
it's
has to be
genius.
so. I was thinking to myself on the way home, like, where the fuck did this damn challenge start in the first place?
Yeah, how did it start?
I remember shortly before Luck of the Irish last year, like the whole month of March, like shortly before that, Shadow was trying to tell me, like, oh, it's possible to get a max 9 count. So I said, if it's possible, you do it. And then that kind of initiated.
Yeah, here we are today, like, still here.